Listen to Vladimir Putin.
We could reach an agreement with the US on cutting defense budgets. We have no objections. I think it's a good idea.
Offering the United States the prospect of talks to reduce mutually their expenditure on defense by 50% each. For Russia, the prospect of spending a great deal less on defense must now be an attractive proposition. The Russians spend about $150 billion on defense, and that's increased terrifically since 2022 when the Ukraine war began. The Russians are spending about 8% of their GDP on defense, and by some calculations rather more than that. The Russian public are really feeling the difference because they're having now to pay for increased defense expenditures in Russia by a decrease in pensions and welfare. There is a real choice between spending on the war and spending on the social services for the population. If there is a truce in Ukraine, it would welcome the opportunity of spending a bit less on defense, but it wouldn't spend that much less because it's created a momentum now. It's got a war economy. It's bent its economy out of shape for this war economy, and it won't just be able to reverse it very quickly. So the Russians do need a period of some years to attract more investment, to redesign their credit system, to do something about the way their banks work, and to do something about productivity in Russia, which is very, very low for all sorts of reasons.
I've spoken to President Putin, and they want to do something. I mean, that's what I do. I do deals. My whole life is deals. That's all I know is deals.
This proposal by Vladimir Putin is obviously designed to appeal to President Trump's business side because the United States would like to spend less on defense. President Trump takes the view that one of the things that's wrong with the United States is that the federal government spends too much on everything and should be reduced considerably. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of State for Defense in the United States,
we're going to pursue peace through strength and put America first,
has decreed that there should be an 8% cut in US defense expenditure. That's a very ambitious cut in United States terms. Whether they'll be able to do it or not, we don't know. But the idea of really deep cuts in defense expenditure is something that would be very hard to achieve in the short term, but which I think President Putin has pitched to President Trump because he knows, I guess, that it will appeal to him.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War.
It seems ironic that while these proposals, and they are only proposals, are kicking about, the Europeans are ramping up their defence expenditure really very strongly because they've spent very little on defence over the years, and they now realise that if the United States is on a different tack, which it looks as if it is, then the Europeans need to defend themselves far more effectively than they have in the past. So we're looking now at European defence budgets going up. Some European governments, like the Baltic states and Poland, have already increased their defence expenditures. They're already spending 4.3% of their GDP on defence. Britain has announced that it will up its defence expenditure from 2.3 to 2.5% within a couple of years, and I'd be surprised if we don't get to 3% somewhere before 2030. The arms race in Europe is on because the Europeans feel that Russia is an aggressive imperialist power, and that if it gets a break from fighting in Ukraine, that the Russians nevertheless will be pushing elsewhere because Putin is a natural imperialist. From a financial point of view, I wouldn't take this Putin proposal very seriously at all, because nobody really expects the Russians to reduce their defense expenditure by half, or the United States to reduce it by half. But what it is a political ploy to try to create this sense of momentum that Russia and America are actually strategic partners, not adversaries. President Biden made it very clear that Russia was a strategic adversary, and all the European powers regard Russia as a strategic adversary, the strategic adversary. But Putin is now thinking about different ways in which he can get alongside Trump, since he now sees that the prize of being taken seriously and even engineering a break in the transatlantic relationship is something that Russian leaders before him only dreamed of and never got near, which is being able to get the United States out of European defense and create a one-to-one relationship between Russia, which is very weak, compared to America, which is very strong. But if he can disguise Russia's weakness in a series of great man summits, then that will, as it were, further his imperialist agenda in a way that nothing else would.